The morning sun spilled across Fort Ironwood, giving the dusty base a warm glow. Soldiers hustled toward formation, their boots pounding against the pavement in synchronized rhythm. Amid the noise, one sound stood out, a slow, uneven step, the soft drag of a boot along concrete. Heads turned, whispers rose. A female soldier moved through the crowd, walking with a subtle limp, her left leg stiff with every step. Her uniform looked standard, her rank patch modest, her gait imperfect. To the young, arrogant soldiers watching from the courtyard, that was all they needed. "Look at her," one private snickered. "Walks like she's 90. Another laughed. "Wrong base, Grandma." But she didn't look at them. She didn't even blink. She just kept moving, slow but steady, toward the administration building. Her name was Sergeant Helena Cole, and despite the limp, she carried her shoulders tall, her jaw firm, and her eyes sharp as polished steel. The new recruits didn't know her story, not her missions, not her scars, not the medal pinned beneath her jacket pocket flap, the one she didn't flaunt, the one she'd earned in a place none of them could imagine. The narrator's voice takes over. Welcome to United War, where untold military stories come to life. Today, we follow the journey of a soldier judged by her limp, until a general revealed the truth behind her stride. Helena reached the courtyard gate. 2 recruits blocked the entrance. One smirked. "Ma'am, you lost? The medical wing's that way." He pointed dramatically toward the infirmary. Several soldiers nearby snickered. But Helena simply stepped aside, bypassed them, and continued toward the building. Her limp was obvious, but her discipline never cracked. One soldier muttered, "I bet she faked the injury to get out of deployment." Another added, "Probably never seen a firefight in her life." They had no clue how wrong they were. Scene 3, inside the headquarters. Inside the administrative hallway, she paused, adjusting the small binder in her arms. The walls were covered in framed photographs, battlefields, ceremonies, legends of the unit. Her picture was not on these walls. Not yet. She didn't care. Recognition was never her goal. Survival was. As she walked toward the conference room, the limp became a bit more pronounced. Her knee stiffened, the old injury tightening with each step. She gripped the binder a little harder. She had learned a long time, pain does not slow a warrior. Pride does. Scene 4, eavesdropping soldiers. Outside the building, the recruits continued laughing. "Can't believe they let her in uniform like that. Makes us all look weak." Another soldier elbowed him. "Relax, she's probably just some admin clerk." But inside the hallway, 2 senior NCOs who overheard them exchanged serious glances. Do they have any idea who she is? Not a clue. She doesn't brag, ever. Should we tell them? No, they're about to find out. Helena reached the conference room just seconds before a sudden silence fell throughout the building. Boots snapped to attention. Conversations halted. General Marcus Harlow entered the hallway. A towering man with years of command in his posture, he scanned the corridor until his eyes landed on her. He stopped. Completely froze. The soldiers nearby noticed. Why had the general halted mid-step? Why was he staring at her, the limping woman they mocked minutes ago? Helena stepped aside to let him pass, but he didn't. Instead, he moved closer. Eyes locked on a small glint of silver near her left pocket. It was just barely visible, a tiny corner of a medal, concealed but unmistakable. The Silver Star, the 3rd highest military decoration for valor in combat. General Harlow's voice, normally thunderous, dropped to a reverent whisper. "Sergeant Cole?" Helena's face remained calm. "Good morning, sir." And then something happened that made every soldier's jaw hit the floor. General Harlow straightened his back, heels together, and he saluted her. Not casually, not politely, but with sharp, absolute respect. A salute he reserved only for heroes. Silence swallowed the hallway. The recruits stared, speechless. The ones who mocked her earlier felt their stomachs drop. Who was she? Why would a general salute her first? What had she done? The general answered without them speaking. Fort Ironwood is honored to have you here, Sergeant. Your actions in the Sangora Valley saved an entire battalion. The hallway exploded into shocked whispers. Sangora Valley was legend. Surviving it was nearly impossible. Becoming a hero there? Even rarer. But Helena only nodded, her expression steady. Just doing my duty, sir. As the general walked beside her into the briefing room, the young soldiers watched in stunned silence. Their laughter didn't echo anymore. Their arrogance had evaporated. For the first time, they understood. The limp wasn't weakness. It was a scar of courage, a reminder of a battlefield they had never seen. And this woman they mocked was a warrior beyond anything they would ever comprehend.
By mid-2022, the conflict enters a dangerous new chapter. Russia, frustrated by the resistance it originally underestimated, begins deploying heavier firepower. Long-range missiles, new ground tactics, and intensified pressure on key cities attempt to regain momentum. Ukraine responds with a level of unity and determination that shocks even their allies. Entire communities reorganize themselves, converting schools into shelters, factories into ammunition workshops, and civilians into defenders. This is no longer just a war fought by armies. It is a war fought by entire populations. 2. The battle for the East. The Donbass region becomes the heart of a massive struggle. From Severodonetsk to Lysychansk, street battles erupt that echo the destructive urban warfare of the 20th century. Buildings collapse under artillery barrages. Smoke coats the horizon like a permanent shadow. Yet within this chaos, something unexpected continues. Ukrainian forces adapt faster than intelligence agencies predicted. Small tactical units strike with precision. Hit-and-run operations disrupt supply lines. Local knowledge becomes an advantage no satellite can replicate. Russian forces respond ruthlessly, pushing forward inch by inch. This becomes a battle not measured by kilometers, but by blocks, rooms, and corridors. As the war intensifies, its impact spreads far beyond the battlefield. Energy markets spiral into crisis. Food shortages hit dozens of countries. Diplomats scramble to maintain fragile alliances. For the first time in decades, the world realizes how deeply interconnected Europe's security is with global stability. In Washington, Brussels, Beijing, and other capitals, world leaders reevaluate their strategies, preparing for a conflict that may last much longer than expected. But while governments debate, civilians endure the harshest reality. Families travel for days to escape shelling. Hospitals operate underground. Children learn to recognize the sound of incoming missiles. In a village outside Kharkiv, an elderly woman continues to bake bread every morning, sharing it with soldiers and neighbors. Her kitchen, once a peaceful place, becomes a symbol of resilience. In another town, a school teacher leads classes in a bunker, teaching history under dim lights while explosions shake the walls above. The war transforms ordinary people into symbols of courage. Summer turns into fall, and something remarkable begins to occur. Ukrainian forces launch counteroffensives with surprising speed. Kharkiv becomes a turning point. Russian front lines crack under pressure. Entire sectors retreat within hours. Ukraine regains more territory in days than it lost in months. The momentum of the war suddenly feels different, and the world begins questioning what Russia's next move will be. But as Ukraine celebrates, commanders understand one truth clearly. This is only the beginning of a much harder, much longer fight. 6. The silent winter approaches. Both sides prepare for conditions that could be as brutal as the fighting itself. Frozen roads, dwindling supplies, and relentless drone warfare set the stage for the next chapter. The narrator closes with a chilling transition. As temperatures fall and darkness grows longer, the war enters a phase where every decision, every strike, and every mistake could decide the fate of nations. In Part 3, the conflict transforms again into a war of technology, intelligence, and psychological endurance.
Winter descends on Eastern Europe not as a season, but as another combatant in the war. The cold sharpens the conflict. Frostbite becomes as dangerous as bullets. Both armies brace for a test of endurance no weapon can soften. For soldiers in trenches, the ground freezes beneath them. Their uniforms stiffen. Breath turns to mist as they wait, sometimes hours, for movement on the horizon. The winter war has begun. 2. The battle of drones and data. As temperatures fall, the nature of the conflict transforms. What the world once called a conventional ground war now turns into something new. A battlefield dominated by drones, satellites, and the unseen world of digital warfare. Russia deploys waves of Iranian-made drones, searching for infrastructure, power stations, communication hubs. Ukraine counters with precision air defense systems, many supplied by allies. A silent duel plays out in the night sky. Above the clouds, satellites track troop movements. Below the ground, hackers wage their own invisible war, piercing networks, disrupting command centers, and exposing battlefield secrets. This is a conflict where keyboards are as dangerous as rifles. 3. Darkness across a nation. In late winter, Russia's shift strategy. Instead of pushing at the front lines, they target Ukraine's power grid, electricity stations, water pumping systems, heating plants. Entire cities are plunged into darkness. Families gather around candles, searching for warmth against the freezing nights. Hospitals run on generators. Trains stall across the countryside. But even as blackouts spread, something remarkable happens. Communities organize. Volunteers deliver supplies. Engineers rebuild transformers under fire. Ukraine refuses to fall into paralysis. Through cold, hunger, and exhaustion, the spirit of resistance grows stronger. 4. Soldiers on edge, the psychological front. Winter also brings a psychological burden that commanders cannot measure on maps. Long nights amplify every sound. Snow mutes distant explosions, making sudden artillery fire even more terrifying. Isolated units face weeks of limited sleep and constant tension. A young Ukrainian soldier writes in his journal, "Winter steals the silence. It makes us hear things that may not be there, or things we wish we didn't hear." On the Russian side, conscripts struggle with unfamiliar terrain and inadequate winter gear. Many face the harsh reality of combat for the first time. Fear, fatigue, and uncertainty become weapons of their own. 5. Turning points in the cold. Despite the punishing weather, both armies seek breakthroughs. In Bakhmut, one of the war's bloodiest battlegrounds, fighting intensifies. Streets become graveyards of broken vehicles. Hills and forests turn into frozen arenas of close-quarters combat. Russian forces, led by elite units, push relentlessly. Ukrainian defenders, entrenched and familiar with every inch of the ruined city, hold their ground with astonishing resilience.
Every building captured by one side is often recaptured hours later. Bakhmut becomes a symbol, not of victory, but of sacrifice. 6. A war of innovation. Winter forces both nations to innovate. Ukrainian engineers modify commercial drones to drop explosives with pinpoint accuracy. Tank crews attach homemade armor to defend against flying threats. Russian units experiment with new trench layouts, winter camouflage, and decoy structures to confuse surveillance systems. The war becomes a brutal laboratory of tactics. What works, survives. What fails, disappears in the snow. 7. The world watches and worries. As winter storms sweep across Europe, global anxieties rise. NATO members debate the risk of deeper involvement. Countries struggle with energy shortages, economic strain, and political pressure. World leaders understand one thing: the outcome of this winter phase may determine the next decade of international power. This is no longer just a regional war. It is a global recalibration of military strategy. 8. The thaw and what comes after. By late winter, temperatures begin to rise. Snow melts into mud, turning the battlefield into a swamp that stalls vehicles and slows movement. But with the thaw comes preparation. Ukraine plans a large-scale counteroffensive. Russia fortifies defensive lines stretching hundreds of kilometers. The narrator closes Part 3. Narrator. Winter ends, but the war does not. As the ice thaws and the ground softens, a new chapter prepares to unfold. A chapter defined not by weather, but by willpower, strategy, and the choices of nations unwilling to surrender.
Spring arrives quietly in Ukraine, not with celebration, but with anticipation. The fields that were once frozen begin to soften, and with them the tension across the front lines. Soldiers who survived the winter stand ready for a new phase of the war. Their uniforms lighten, but their burdens grow heavier. Every commander knows the coming months will decide everything. The world watches, breath held, as Ukraine prepares a massive counteroffensive. Troops train relentlessly. Armored columns assemble. New Western equipment arrives: tanks, artillery, air defense systems. A storm is forming, not in the sky, but in strategy. On the other side, Russia fortifies its defenses like never before. Layers of trench lines, fields of landmines, dragon's teeth blocking armored routes, fortified bunkers engineered to withstand direct hits, a wall stretching hundreds of kilometers, their answer to Ukraine's come-in push. Veterans replace exhausted conscripts. Drones swarm the skies day and night. Russian commanders know they must hold their ground or risk losing the initiative entirely. The war has reached a point where neither side can afford collapse. Early in the morning, under a sky painted orange with rising sun, Ukraine launches its long-awaited counteroffensive. Armored vehicles roar forward across fields still soaked with melted snow. Artillery booms behind them, shaking the earth. Drones fly overhead, marking targets and guiding strikes. For the first time in months, momentum shifts. Ukrainian units break through initial Russian lines. Villages are liberated. Flags rise again over towns that had been silent for nearly a year. But every step forward is paid for in blood. Minefields claim vehicles. Hidden artillery hammers advancing troops. Drones swarm like steel insects, hunting armor from above. War is progress measured in meters. The world sees dramatic footage. Soldiers pulling wounded comrades from burning vehicles. Medics treating injuries under drone threat. Engineers clearing mines while shells land meters away. Unknown heroes become symbols of resilience. One Ukrainian sapper, exhausted and covered in dirt, says during a brief interview, "We aren't fighting for territory. were fighting for the right to go home someday. On the Russian side, young conscripts learn fast what survival means. Some defend positions for weeks without resupply. Others hold trenches under constant bombardment. In this war, heroism exists on both sides, twisted into tragedy by politics, history, and fate. Urban warfare returns. As the counteroffensive pushes forward, cities become battlegrounds again. Apartment blocks crumble. Streets turn to labyrinths of smoke and shattered glass. Every room, every staircase, every rooftop holds danger. Drone operators guide soldiers from afar, mapping threats in real time. Snipers wait in silence. Night operations turn neighborhoods into shadow wars. Urban warfare is slow, brutal, relentless. Yet inch by inch, progress continues. Foreign governments scramble to react. NATO allies increase support. American and European weapons flow in. Talks about aircraft, long-range missiles, and future NATO membership intensify. Meanwhile, Russia strengthens ties with nations willing to support its cause, creating new supply lines, new political alliances, new strategies. The conflict spills into global diplomacy. Negotiations, threats, warnings. Each statement shapes the battlefield. The world realizes the truth. This war is reshaping the modern order. By late summer, both armies are worn down. Russia struggles to maintain its defensive lines. Ukraine struggles to sustain momentum. Bodies are weary. Ammunition runs low. Both nations calculate every strike, every advance, every loss. Yet despite exhaustion, neither side shows signs of surrender. The narrator reflects, they've reached the breaking point, but they refuse to break. As the year edges towards its end, diplomats search for solutions. Negotiations spark and fade. Peace talks emerge and collapse. No one knows how long the war will last or how it will end, but one truth echoes through the ruins, the trenches, and the hearts of millions. This is a war not just of armies, but of identity, of sovereignty, of memory, of generations who refuse to be forgotten. Narrator, closing words. The story of this war is not finished. It continues to unfold, one battle at a time, one decision at a time, one life at a time. And history will remember those who endured it.